So the other day, our friends at Z Health put up a great post talking about lateral flexion, right? Spinal flexion to the side. And if you're into the internet at all, you can see that it makes sense that my spine does what my spine is supposed to do. Now, it's difficult to assess how much spinal flexion I should have, how much spinal extension I should have, especially since there are so many units involved, so many motion segments involved, right? It's easier to say the shoulder should be able to do this than it is to say, well, I see that you can't flex to the side. But what's interesting is that when we start to take away degrees of freedom of the spine, of course we start to have fewer movement choices. And interestingly enough, being able to, inability to side bend is well correlated to even low back pain or, wait for it, balance. So, and that should make sense, right? The spine is such a sophisticated system, it's actually difficult to even model the thing in a computer. There are so many forces and so many dynamic loads in this incredible fluid dynamic system. So one of the things that we can think about is, hey, we do a lot of programming of flexion into the system and extension into the system, right? And we do that in sort of two ways. We usually do it from a global system, so like something looks like kipping or rolling, right, or hanging over on a keg, Jefferson curl. Those are all global flexion systems where we're expanding the system, we're flexing and extending over the whole system. And then we tend to mobilize sometimes at a certain motion segment or one or two motion segments. So I lay on a couple of cross balls or a Gemini or a small roller, and I'm putting a little bit more flexion extension into just a few motion segments of the spine. Well, typically when we see people programming in lateral movement, right, and maybe that's swinging a rope or side bending, you'll see that in our warm-up that we do, we're always doing some side bending in part of our shoulder spin up. But an easy way to get better compliance in the chest wall and even work on some of this lateral motion is just to lay sideways on your roller. So one of the things that we see is that people are pretty keen on flexion extension in the roller, but suddenly flipping on the side is an easy way to put some motion in laterally where I'm actually asking some of the motion segments to do a lot more of the movement. So one of the things that we get when we improve a little bit of compliance or how well the chest wall moves is that we're going to see better breathing, better movement rotation. By putting loading into the rib cage, I'm actually changing what's happening with that rib at the spine, right? How that rib articulates with the actual vertebra at that motion segment. So not only am I getting my lats in here, but there's an incredible opportunity, even through my breathing, to breathe all the way out, is to take an opportunity to add in a ton of lateral motion into the spine. And even if it means just getting a little bit of sort of additional movement in here so I have some tolerance built up for this lateral aspect. You know, one of the things that happens is when we look at a lot of our contact athletes on the ground, people who are being tackled, people who are in contact sports, we see oftentimes they'll develop a little costochondritis or a painful condition of irritation of cartilage on the front here where these ribs come together, and sometimes that can be a function of the fact that they haven't put any motion or any input into working on the intercostals, into any of these connective tissue, or even this rib system. So we end up as a really, really stiff thoracic spine, stiff rib cage that doesn't handle loads or give us as many movement choices as we like. So again, difficult to quantify how much I should be able to side bend besides saying, can you side bend or not? But an easy way to work it into something you're already doing is to try to get a little breathing and a little bit of side motion. And now as I roll through the roller, I'm able to actually hit some vectors and corners that actually may include those motion segments, those segmental motions that improve some of this lateral flexion without having to do a whole bunch of extra work. So the moral of the story is you should be able to flex and extend, rotate, do all those things combined, and that means you're going to need to be able to move side to side. Check it out.